There are moments in life when someone speaks and their words don't just enter your ears. They enter your being, not because they are poetic, not because they are clever, but because they are real. I've never felt this calm around anyone else before. If he says this to you, listen closely. Not with your ears, but with your inner stillness. Because in that one sentence lies something rare in this world, emotional involvement wrapped in presence. Many chase fireworks, forgetting the peace of a steady flame. This journey isn't about decoding someone's affection, understanding the quality of their presence. Stay with me, not to find a trick, but to remember a truth. That emotional intimacy is not found in grand gestures, but in small moments where nothing needs to be said. And yet everything is understood. Ask yourself, when someone speaks, do they fill the space, or do they calm the storm within it? There are things in life that pass quickly through the mind like clouds in a summer sky. And then there are things that remain, like the quiet presence of a mountain, unmoved by wind or rain. When someone is emotionally involved, their actions stop being performance. Their words stop being decoration. They become weighty, anchored. They reveal something deeper, something that even they may not fully understand, but cannot help expressing. This is the difference between surface and soul, between attention and involvement. True emotional involvement reveals itself through presence, not performance. When a man truly feels, he does not try to impress, he simply shows up, fully, calmly, with sincerity that cannot be rehearsed. His presence speaks before his mouth opens. It is in how he listens, not just how he speaks. It is in how he remembers things you never thought you mentioned. It is in how he sits with you, even in silence, and makes the air feel warmer without saying a word. Imagine a traveler entering a dense forest. At the edge, he claps his hands, loud noises, and tries to bend branches, hoping to feel in control. But the deeper he goes, the quieter he becomes. The forest demands it. Stillness teaches him that noise cannot conquer presence, only reverence can. In time, he stops trying to impress the forest. He simply walks softly, breathes with it, and becomes part of it. So it is with a heart that has fallen into deeper waters. The man who is emotionally involved no longer needs to announce his affection with declarations designed to win approval. His very being declares it. In the way he leans in how his energy softens around you, in how he allows you to see his uncertainties. He is no longer trying to perform. He is present. In daily life, presence reveals itself through the smallest gestures. A cup of tea placed quietly beside you. A message not sent out of habit, but at the exact moment when your silence was asking for comfort. In emotional involvement, there is awareness of your shifts, your pauses, your subtle signals. He is watching, not to control, but to understand. This is not performance. This is presence. A teacher once said to his students, "Do not confuse the man who speaks often of love with the one who loves silently through his actions." The wind shouts, but it is the earth that holds you. And this is true. The emotionally present man is like the earth, grounded, receptive, and dependable. You feel his care not in his declarations, but in the way he holds space for your being from nature. From nature, too, this lesson arises. Sun does not declare each morning that it will rise. It simply does. And in its quiet ascent, life awakens. Trees do not shout as they grow. They simply reach, slowly, persistently, until one day they touch the sky. Emotional presence is like that. It does not arrive with noise. Arrives with consistency, with silence that nurtures. There is a saying from the Taoist sage Lai Tzu: the softest thing in the world overcomes the hardest thing in the world. This is presence. It is not forceful. It is not dramatic, but it endures. And in time, it transforms everything around it. In a world hungry for display, performance can be mistaken for love. Performance needs an audience. Presence needs only stillness. If he stays with you, even in your quietest moments, if he listens when your words falter, if he softens when you show your scars, he is already involved. His presence is the evidence. And yet, this presence is not accidental. It requires inner discipline, a stillness cultivated like a garden. The man who is emotionally involved has, perhaps without stout knowing, stepped onto a path of inner mastery. He is learning to be with his own emotions, not avoid them. He is learning to hold space for another, not fill it with noise. In doing so, he walks with quiet strength, the kind that changes people without trying to. Emotional depth is never loud. It is gentle, measured, and quietly persistent. Real connection speaks softly, yet it echoes far beyond the moment. When a man is truly moved by you, you will not need to guess it through his loud proclamations. His energy will wrap around you like a warm cloth, barely noticed, but undeniably felt. His affection will be in the pauses, in the questions he asks, in the fact that he never rushes away. There is an old parable about a monk who tended a bamboo grove for many years. Every day he would water the soil, prune the branches, remove weeds. A visitor once asked, "Why do you care for these trees so quietly? Don't you want them to grow faster?" The monk smiled and said, "Loud rain floods the ground. Gentle rain nourishes the roots. So it is with connection. The loud gestures may be pleasing to the eye, but it is the quiet persistence, the regular checking in, the remembering of your words, sitting through your silences, that nourishes the bond. Real emotional involvement does not chase a climax. It seeks continuity, a rhythm, a breath shared over time. In personal development, those who grow the deepest are rarely the ones who shout their goals from rooftops. They are the ones who rise early, meditate daily, journal through their storms, and allow growth to unfold like the turning of seasons. In relationships, the same principle holds. The ones who stay quietly grow deeply. You may find, for example, the man who remembers the story of your childhood fear and returns a month later with a small gesture to ease that fear, is more emotionally involved than the one who buys grand gifts with empty presents. Loud love fades when silence arrives, but quiet love endures it. The philosopher Chuang once wrote, "The sound of water says what I think." What a beautiful reminder that the deepest expressions in life often arise without noise. When he is emotionally involved, his actions will flow like water, adapting, responding, nourishing, not always visible, but always present. This quiet persistence may even feel unfamiliar. You may wonder, why doesn't he say more? But listen, not with your ears, but with your being. Notice how he shows up, how he stays when the mood turns difficult, how he listens to your silence more intently than others listen to your words. This is the presence of someone who is not swayed by performance, but rooted in reality. He is not trying to catch your attention. He is trying to understand your essence. That's why his words are fewer, but heavier. That's why his gaze lingers. That's why you feel heard, even when you haven't said much. There is great power in the quiet voice. Not the voice that whispers for fear, but the voice that speaks only when it means something. If he says, "You feel familiar to me," or "Being with you makes things slow down," these may sound simple. Within them is an entire inner world, a stillness stirred, a heart awakening. Do not rush past such words. Let them echo. And yet, even such words are only part of the story. His consistency over time will speak the loudest. If his calm remains through your storms, if his presence does not disappear when you're no longer easy to love, if his affection remains when you are tired, distant, or raw, he is emotionally involved, not because of what he says, but because of how he stays. In this journey of love and connection, let us not chase volume. Let us listen instead for the deeper rhythm, the breath of someone who is willing to walk beside us, not ahead or behind, but with us. Let us learn to value the man who speaks softly, because his words are crafted in truth. Let us recognize that the gentlest hand often carries the strongest soul. If his words calm your mind instead of exciting your ego, if his silence is comforting rather than confusing, if his presence feels like coming home, he is involved, emotionally, deeply, quietly, like a river carving a canyon not through force, but through time. Let your heart recognize this kind of love. Let your soul soften into it. And let your mind remember this: the loudest drumbeat cannot awaken what the softest breath can touch. There are certain questions in life that brush against the surface like a breeze gliding over still water. And then there are those that stir the depths, reaching places within us we didn't know were waiting to be seen. When a man is emotionally involved, the questions he asks no longer remain at the surface of routine and politeness. Begin to seek out the subtle corners of your soul, not out of curiosity, but from reverence. He begins to wonder not just what you do, why you do it. Not simply what you want, but what you long for. Not who you are in the world's eyes, who you are when the world is silent. This kind of curiosity cannot be manufactured. It is not driven by strategy or seduction. It is a soft unfolding, a quiet leaning in. A man who is emotionally connected will not rush to ask questions designed to keep the conversation alive. He will ask questions that allow you to come alive. When he inquires about your childhood fears, your dreams that don't fit into sentences, or the thoughts you've never spoken aloud, he is inviting your inner world to step out from behind its veil. There is an old story of a monk and a stranger who arrived at the temple gates. The stranger asked, "What must I do to be accepted here?" The monk replied, "Tell me about the moment in your life when you felt most afraid." The stranger hesitated, then asked, "Will that make me worthy?" The monk simply said, "No, but it will make you visible." When someone asks questions that touch your soul, they are not trying to collect information. They are trying to see you, not as a role or a body or a series of events, but as a living story that is still being written. Emotional involvement transforms communication into communion. There is no longer a need to impress, only a desire to understand. In daily life, this shows up in gentle, unexpected ways. He may ask, "What kind of silence do you like best?" Or he might notice that you pause before answering certain questions. And rather than filling the pause, he waits with you. He might ask what songs remind you of home, or what part of yourself you're still trying to forgive. These are not ordinary questions. They are doors, slowly opened, quietly walked through. Even in nature, we see how presence creates deeper knowing. The birdwatcher who visits the same tree each morning learns not just the names of the birds, the rhythm of their arrival. The forest reveals its secrets only to those who come without loud footsteps. So too does the soul. A man who is emotionally present learns to ask not what excites you today, but what sustains you tomorrow. He waits for the answers like one waits for dawn, not demanding but receptive. Confucius once said, "The superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions." When a man's words move inward, toward your emotions, your fears, your joys, he is already acting from the heart. His attention exceeds the superficial. He is not simply having a conversation. He is making space for your inner self to step forward. Let us not underestimate the power of a single question asked from a place of true presence. It can untie a knot within you. It can make you feel seen in ways that no compliment ever could. And it tells you something essential. He is not in love with your image. He is in love with your essence. This is emotional involvement, not always poetic, but always profound. As this quiet journey continues, we begin to notice the shift that happens when someone starts to see through us, not in a way that makes us feel exposed, but in a way that makes us feel held. And it often begins when they stop commenting on the surface and start naming the invisible things we carry. When he speaks of your inner world more than your outer appearance, he is feeling, not just seeing. There is a difference between appreciation and connection. Many may appreciate what is visible. Few seek to understand what is hidden. A man who speaks to the surface is admiring. A man who speaks into your soul is involving. We live in a world that celebrates the visible, beauty, status, charm. But the soul does not live on the surface. It lives quietly beneath, in the tension between thoughts and feelings, in the quiet hopes you've never voiced, in the wounds you cover with laughter. When someone starts speaking to these invisible places, not to fix, but to witness, that is a rare and sacred thing. There is a Zen tale of a disciple who asked his master, "How do I know if someone truly sees me?" The master pointed to a candle and said, "When they sit with you even after the flame has gone out." In other words, when someone remains with you after your brightness dims, when they value you not for the light you give, but for the space you are, then they have begun to see. Words that reflect the inner world are not always smooth. They might begin with hesitance, even silence, but they carry weight. He might say, "I notice how your energy changes when you're near water." Or, "I sense you carry grief you don't speak of." These are not compliments. These are recognitions. They are born of emotional sensitivity, a kind of subtle listening that goes beyond a sound. In real life, this can be felt in the man who remembers not what color you wore, but how your voice changed when you talked about your childhood, or in the way he holds eye contact when you speak about something painful, not looking for a solution, staying with you so you don't carry it alone. It's the quiet shift from admiration to empathy. Nature again reveals this truth. A gardener who only looks at the flowers may miss the health of the soil. But one who tends the roots, checking the texture, the moisture, the nutrients, ensures the bloom is sustained. A man emotionally involved tends to the roots of your being. He's not interested in how you appear in spring, but how you endure in winter. There is a saying from the Buddhist teacher Shantideva, "Just as I protect myself from harm, so may I become a refuge for others." When a man speaks to your inner world, he is no longer protecting just himself. He is becoming a safe space for your emotions to exist unjudged and unhidden. This kind of speaking is not ordinary. It does not come from books or lessons. It comes from attunement, from being deeply present to your spirit. It comes from listening without rushing to respond. It comes from seeing you as more than roles, more than form. It is the soft voice that says, "I see your joy and your sorrow, and I am not afraid of either." The transition from outer beauty to inner understanding is subtle, unmistakable. The way he speaks changes. The things he notices deepen. The questions he asks become less about entertainment and more about truth, and your body will know it. You will feel more relaxed, more seen, less guarded. And this is where the journey begins to shift from performance to presence, from knowing to understanding, from interest to involvement. The emotionally invested man does not walk beside the version of you you show the world. He walks beside the version of you that hides when the world becomes too loud. And he speaks not to impress that version, but to soothe it. This is not romance in the way stories taught us. This is something older than romance. This is recognition, as if his soul remembers something yours had forgotten, as if his voice carries an echo of safety. not excitement. And when he speaks of your inner world more than your appearance, he is not trying to own your light. He is trying to honor your shadows. Let us return then to stillness. Let us observe how we are spoken to. Let us listen not just with our ears, but with our breath. The man who sees your smile and asks what hides behind it, he is not merely present. He is connected. The man who forgets what you wore but remembers how you felt, he is not looking at you, he is feeling with you. And so the deeper truths arrive gently, like mist on the mountain, like moonlight across a quiet lake. He may never say, "I'm emotionally involved." He may never write poems or give grand speeches. But if his words make you feel safe, if his questions open rather than close, if his attention is tender rather than hungry, you already know. His soul has already entered the room, and that is more than enough. There are things the world celebrates loudly: grand gestures, impassioned declarations, visible strengths. But often the truest signs of emotional depth arrive without ceremony. They live in the quiet bravery of vulnerability, in the subtle unveiling of one's inner world, shared not for display, but for closeness. When a man is emotionally involved, there comes a moment when he offers something he has long protected: his inner weather, his thoughts, his fears, his unpolished truths. And if he says something like, "I feel different when I'm with you," know that you have not touched his mind. You have stirred his being. Vulnerability is not the absence of strength, but the proof of it. For one to share not what is certain, but what is tender, is a sacred offering. A man raised to wear armor, to present confidence, to guard softness, if he lowers that guard in your presence, he is already involved, not just emotionally, but soulfully. There is an old Shaolin parable about a stone bridge that crosses a roaring river. The bridge is not ornate. It is not carved with symbols, but it has stood for centuries, not because it is adorned, but because it is grounded. One day, a disciple asked his master why the bridge never breaks, even during the fiercest rains. The master said, "Because it never pretends not to shake, it sways. It bows, it lets the storm move through it, and in this way it remains. So too with the man who allows you to see his softness. When he says something that reveals his emotional sway, his internal shifts, he is not collapsing. He is letting the storm move through him and choosing you as witness. To say, 'I feel different when I'm with you,' is not small. It is an admission that your presence has entered his internal landscape and shifted the air. It is not flattery, it is transformation quietly spoken. In daily life, this may appear as the moment when he shares a thought he's never voiced aloud. Perhaps he admits to an insecurity he usually hides behind humor. Perhaps he speaks of a memory that shaped his trust. Or simply, he reveals that with you. He feels a stillness unfamiliar and comforting. These are not just words. They are the movements of a guarded heart beginning to open. Nature, again, mirrors this truth. The turtle, long hidden within its shell, does not emerge all at once. It tests the air with patience. When it begins to trust its surroundings, reveals its vulnerable neck, slow, deliberate, unforced, so too with the man who has learned to retreat for safety. If he begins to emerge with small, sincere admissions, it is not accidental. It is sacred. There is a little-known saying by Lao Tzu: "Those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know. But those who whisper their fears have found the beginning of wisdom." A man who shares his quiet fears with you is not unsure. He is awakening. He is no longer controlled by the mask. He is moving toward wholeness, toward real presence. To witness this in someone is to stand at the edge of a deep inner forest. You are not asked to change the forest, only to respect its depth. When someone says they feel different with you, they are naming that you are not just an observer in their life. you are now part of their internal compass. The emotional landscape has shifted. The soul has begun to stretch toward your presence like a tree bending toward light. But this journey does not end in revelation. It continues in consistency, in the quiet, repeating acts of showing up. Emotional involvement, though felt in moments, is proven in discipline. Just as the body must be trained to hold stillness, the heart must be trained to remain open. Vulnerability is not a one-time offering, it is a practice. There is a difference between someone who shares a truth and someone who remains after that truth has been witnessed. A man who is emotionally involved will not retreat after revealing himself. He will stay, breathe, reflect. Running through the park, he will face the discomfort of having been seen. And in doing so, he strengthens the bond not just with you, but with himself. There is a story of a Shaolin monk who, after many years of meditation, was asked by a visitor, "What is the highest discipline of the mind?" The monk replied, "To remain." The visitor, confused, asked, "Remain where?" The monk smiled, "Where it hurts. Where it fears, where it loves." Or emotional involvement is the choice to remain soft when the world invites hardness, to remain truthful when the mask would be easier, to remain close when distance would be safer. In relationships, this looks like a man who continues to show care even when there is no praise for it. It looks like listening without rushing, holding space without fixing, staying connected even through discomfort. He may not always have the perfect words, but he stays present. And that presence becomes the most profound form of devotion. In nature, the river does not pause its flow because the rocks are sharp. It moves around them, steady, patient, shaping them over time. The emotionally disciplined man does the same. He learns to move through his internal resistance, his fears, his old conditioning, not perfectly, but persistently. He does so because you matter more than his defense. There is a quote from Ditu Jen, the Zen master, "A flower falls even though we love it, and a weed grows even though we do not love it." This reminds us that we do not control what rises in our emotions. We can choose how we move with them. The emotionally involved man is not perfect, but he is present. He watches what grows inside him, and he includes you in that awareness. You may notice this in the way he speaks of growth, not just affection, in how he says, "I want to understand this better," or "I want to work through this with you." These are not mere words. They are the actions of one who is disciplining his heart to stay open, not only in the easy moments, but in all moments. And then, perhaps most profoundly, there is a kind of communication that goes beyond language. A silence between emotionally connected souls that is not empty, but saturated with meaning. It is not about saying everything. It is about not needing to. If he says nothing, yet you feel everything, that's where the truth lies. There is a sacred quiet between those who are emotionally in tune. It is the silence that follows vulnerability and does not ask for explanation. It is the space between breaths where two people simply exist, not performing, not solving, but being. There is an ancient Zen parable of two monks sitting side by side facing the mountains. One says, "It is beautiful." The other says nothing. At sunset, the first says, "Why did you not respond?" The second smiles, "I was listening with my whole being." True emotional involvement does not always require dialogue. It reveals itself in the way he looks at you when you are not speaking, in how he sits beside you when you are hurting, in how he shares a moment of stillness without the need to fill it. In everyday life, silence shows up in shared presence, watching the sky darken without words, walking without talking, knowing when not to speak and simply to hold. It is a quiet companionship forged not by intensity, but by depth. The hummingbird and the flower share no conversation, yet their connection is real. precise, and harmonious. So too are souls who have learned to listen beyond words. When he does not rush your silence, when he breathes beside your stillness, when his presence says, "I'm here," louder than any sentence could, that it is emotional involvement. The philosopher Plotinus once wrote, "Why must close our eyes and invoke a new manner of seeing, a wakefulness that is the birthright of us all?" This new manner of seeing is the art of listening with the soul, of sitting in silence not as avoidance, but as intimacy. This is not the silence of distance. It is the silence of knowing. It is the silence of safety. It is the rare stillness that arises only when both people have stopped reaching to be understood, because understanding has already arrived. And so, through vulnerability, discipline, and quiet presence, emotional involvement takes form, not loudly, not urgently, but deeply. As a river carves stone, as breath shapes the body in meditation, as time reveals the nature of truth. The emotionally involved man may never say all the words you imagined, but if his presence soothes you, if his silence holds you, if his honesty opens you, he has already spoken the most important truth. One not found in declarations, but in devotion. One not measured in passion, but in presence. So let us not seek only what is loud. Let us seek what endures. Let us listen for the quiet voice, slow breath, the subtle gaze. For there, in those still places, love becomes something not said, but lived in a world that moves too fast and speaks too much. Remember, the most powerful signs of emotional involvement are not loud declarations, quiet recognitions. Rewatch this not to memorize words, but to remember what they feel like. Let it remind you that love, true love, doesn't shout across the room. It breathes quietly beside you, like water shaping stone, like wind kissing the edge of a candle flame. It doesn't force, it flows. And when he says the words that calm your soul instead of quickening your pulse, he's already there, emotionally, fully, quietly involved.